You didn't come across this video by accident. This prophecy only appears when the soul is ready, and if it reached you, it's because the time has come. Thoth warned us millennia ago. There would come a time when humanity would forget who it is. That time is now. You feel it. You can't explain it, but you feel it. The world has changed. Something is out of place. The old rules don't work anymore. Time moves differently. And deep inside, in your soul, a silent question keeps following you. Why am I here? Maybe it's because you're standing at a crossroads, and when that happens, you either wake up or you'll sink. But if you're still watching, it's because something in you refuses to stay asleep. So listen till the end, because what you're about to find out can't be forgotten. What is hidden within you will be revealed when your soul becomes light and your mind is free from illusion. Have you ever stopped to think why there's so much talk about Thoth, Hermes, Trismegistus, and the Emerald Tablet? It's not just cheap mysticism. It's because what's written there holds one of the oldest and most powerful bodies of knowledge in human history. A wisdom that survived the fall of empires, the burning of libraries, and the censorship of religions. Because it doesn't belong to one people. It belongs to the universe. Thoth, or Hermes, was more than a god or a wise man. He was the bridge between worlds, the scribe of the gods, the keeper of mysteries. And what he left behind wasn't a book, it was a code. The Emerald Tablet isn't just an ordinary text, it's a riddle, written in symbolic language that only reveals itself to those who have already started to wake up. In it, Thoth doesn't speak to the intellect, he speaks to the soul, to that silent part of you that still remembers where you came from. As above, so below. As within, so without. That's the first key. The world doesn't happen outside of you. It shows up based on your inner state. The chaos you see out there started within. Another key. The sun is the father, the moon is the mother, the wind carried it in its belly, and the earth is its nurse. That's pure alchemy. It's the blueprint of creation, the recipe for manifestation. It's how the invisible becomes visible, how spirit becomes matter, and how you can learn to transform your reality if you understand these forces within you. Thoth taught that everything is vibration, that the universe is mental, that time is an illusion, that the human being carries within the same geometry as the cosmos, and that consciousness is the real tool to shape reality. He spoke of polarity, of cause and effect, of rhythm, of correspondence, laws that govern everything, even if you don't believe in them, just like gravity. You don't have to believe in it for it to work. And why was all this hidden? Because a human who understands these laws can't be controlled. They don't live as victims. They break the script. They stop repeating and start creating, and the whole system collapses when people wake up. But Thoth knew this forgetting would happen. He knew humanity would fall, that it would trade truth for comfort, the soul for the material, the sacred for the superficial. That's why he left a message, a prophecy, something written thousands of years ago. But that speaks directly to the time we're living in now, a time where the sacred would be mocked, where the gods would abandon the earth, where spiritual emptiness would take over, and humanity would forget who it is. The forgotten prophecy. Thoth knew all of this would one day be forgotten. He saw clearly what was coming, not as some vague mystical vision, but as an inevitable sequence, and he recorded it. In the hidden lines of the Hermetic texts, especially in the Asclepius, he described what he called the fall of the spirit, an age when humanity would drift so far from truth it wouldn't even remember it ever existed. There will come a time, he said, when men will no longer value the sacred. Worship of the gods will become pointless. The gods, tired of mankind's ingratitude, will withdraw. The emptiness would begin there, not as punishment, but as consequence. Because when humans forget the divine stops manifesting in humanity. And the result? A barren earth, a silent sky, a disoriented humanity. Faith would be seen as madness. Light would become uncomfortable, and truth would be treated as a threat. This prophecy isn't a metaphor, it's a mirror. And when we look around today, The reflection is there. The disconnection isn't just technological, it's spiritual. We live in an age where feeling is weakness, believing is naivety, and seeking something beyond the visible is treated as delusion. The soul has been reduced to a metaphor. The invisible became superstition. Death became taboo, and life a meaningless cycle. We're living in a time where the sacred has become a product, where ancient symbols are used as empty aesthetics. Where temples are empty, not because rituals are missing, but because spirit is, and where the biggest prison isn't physical, but internal. Thoth saw this, and he left a warning. Humanity would forget its origin, deny its essence, and dive into a void that no technology could ever fill, a void that doesn't scream, but eats away, that can't be seen, but devours from the inside. That's why so many people today carry a nameless anguish, a sadness that doesn't come from the outside, an exhaustion that rest can't fix, because what's missing isn't energy, it's meaning. And when the soul loses meaning, all that's left is survival. At first, it's subtle, a small emptiness, almost unnoticeable, a strange silence, like something left without warning. But over time, that void grows and takes over, and when the spirit is forgotten, chaos moves in. People still work, still post photos, still smile, but inside, they're falling apart, and they don't even realize it. Life becomes a burden. Waking up feels like a chore. Making plans feels pointless, and that sense of not belonging in the world becomes permanent. You look around and see it everywhere. People numbing themselves with anything. Food, addictions, excess, distraction. People who can't be still anymore, who can't stand being alone with themselves, because deep down, they don't remember who they are anymore. The soul has been suffocated. The sacred has become taboo. And life has turned into an automatic script no one knows who wrote, and that's when the most dangerous thing happens, the inversion. The world turns against its own light. Faith becomes a joke. Kindness becomes weakness. Silence becomes discomfort, and truth starts being hunted. People don't want to hear anymore, don't want to see. They just want to keep existing on autopilot. No thinking, no feeling, no remembering. And when that happens, death starts to seem like rest. Not biological death, but death as an idea, as relief, as refuge. It's hard to say this, but we see it every day. Young people, full of life, but with no desire to live. People who are tired, not physically, but existentially. It's the exhaustion of existing without a soul, of keeping on breathing, but with no purpose, of repeating meaningless days just to keep up the appearance that everything's fine. And the scariest part, this is the new normal. But this isn't the force of destiny. This was announced. This was precisely described in the Hermetic texts. When Thoth spoke of the time when men would stop honoring the divine, he wasn't just predicting a religious crisis. He was seeing an invisible disease spreading, a disease of the soul. A time would come when humanity, in its blindness, would choose darkness, would choose numbness, absence, escape, and it would prefer that to light, because light demands you look within, and not everyone is ready to face what they've hidden there. Let me share with you a short story that illustrates what we're learning here. Once upon a time, there was a man who lived inside a cave. Dark, damp, cold, but it was the only place he knew. He got used to the darkness. He knew where the walls were, where to step, where to find shelter, and over time, he started to believe that was the only world that existed. One day, someone showed up at the entrance of the cave. It was an old traveler. He brought a lit lantern, and he said, "Out there, there's sunlight, there are colors, there's life." The man looked at the flame and felt afraid. The light hurt his eyes. He said it was dangerous, that the heat could burn him, that it was safer to stay where he was. The old man insisted, "You weren't born to live in the shadows." But the man shouted and drove the traveler away, who left, leaving the cave in darkness once again, and the man alone cried. But he didn't know why. He didn't want the light, but he couldn't stand the darkness anymore either. This fable is a reflection of what we're living today. Thousands of people rejecting any form of awakening because they've already adapted to suffering. Pain became company. Confusion became routine. Darkness became a comfort zone. And the saddest part, many don't even realize they're in the cave. They'd rather escape. With excess, competition, instant pleasure, anger disguised as bravery, coldness disguised as maturity, death disguised as life. And deep down, they're all just trying to fill a hole that can never be filled with things from the outside, because what's missing is spirit. Thoth knew. He saw this time coming, the time when the soul would be cast aside, the time when humanity would choose to survive rather than truly live. And that time is now. And when humanity starts choosing absence, when the soul gets tired of calling out and not being heard, the universe starts to respond, but it doesn't respond with anger or punishment. It responds with silence. Hermes wrote it with precision. A time would come when the gods would withdraw. The subtle forces that held balance would simply stop manifesting. And what would be left was a world that looked the same, but had no real life flowing through it. The sky, once a channel for revelations, closes. The stars, once guides for the soul's navigators, stop speaking. The signs vanish. Coincidences fade away, and everything turns dull, an existence without sparkle, a nature that keeps functioning but has lost its music. The earth keeps spinning, the seasons still change, but something's off. The air feels heavy, the fruit rots on the tree, the rivers dry up faster, the seeds don't sprout like they used to. Emotions get unstable, thoughts become tangled, the mind loses direction. Everything gets scrambled in an invisible field that has gone silent. This is the vibrational consequence. There's no drama, no punishment, no moralizing, just consequence. When a human being drifts from their spiritual origin, they fall out of sync with the cosmic symphony, and the universe subtly pulls back. The sacred doesn't abandon us out of revenge. It just goes quiet where no one is listening anymore. And in that silence, what reveals itself is the fracture, the disconnection, the rupture of the invisible order that once held everything together. The Hermetic texts don't talk about this as a threat. They speak with compassion. They warn, they show, they reveal. The cosmos doesn't fall apart because it wants to. It simply reflects what human beings create. If we vibrate fear, chaos, greed, disrespect, the universe mirrors that back in the form of climate, in the body, in broken relationships. And you start to notice. Nothing fits anymore. The attempts to control things fail. Logic starts to fall apart. Old strategies stop working. Because the order that held up the invisible has been broken. The intervention of the Creator and the return of inner order. But the silence of the gods isn't the end. It's just the pause between the fall and the calling. It's the void that forms when everything collapses, so a new order can rise. Because even when everything seems lost, the spark doesn't die, it just waits. Thoth wrote that down. Humanity would fall, spirit would be forgotten, the earth barren, the sky silent. But then deep in the abyss, something incredible would begin to happen. The intervention of the Creator. But not like the religions imagined, not like a force tearing through the skies and descending with thunder, not like an external savior. The intervention doesn't come from outside, it comes from within, and it begins the very moment a soul remembers who it is, remembers that it has always been part of the whole, that it was never separate from the source, that behind all the fears, noise, and masks, there's an untouched core, a point of light no darkness could destroy. That remembrance doesn't come as a thought. It comes as a vibration, like a silent jolt, like a warmth in the chest that suddenly lights up. And what seemed dead awakens. What was silent sings. What was shattered starts coming back together. It's in that moment that the Creator's will reveals itself. Not to save, but to activate, to restore the lost connection. And that connection happens in silence. In the back of a room, in the middle of tears, during a lonely walk, or right in the middle of chaos. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the return, the soul's quiet yes that finally says, I want to remember. And when that happens, everything changes. The cosmic order, which once felt so far away, starts pulsing again inside you. Life takes on a new temperature. Everything around you stays the same. But something inside shifts your perception. What used to be noise becomes a sign, or what used to be confusion becomes language, and what used to be despair turns into presence. Thoth taught this, that when a human realigns with the laws of above and below, balance returns. That when the soul begins to hear the call of spirit again, the chaos starts to lose its grip. Because chaos only rules where forgetting reigns. That's the real intervention, not magical, but vibrational, not saving, but awakening. And that's what marks the dawn of the new consciousness. It doesn't start in the world, it starts in you. And it's in that quiet return to the center, in that point where the soul syncs up again with the rhythm of the universe, that an ancient truth begins to rise out of the darkness of forgetting. We are a species with amnesia. That's the phrase Thoth left echoing through the ages. We forgot. Not by accident, but by distraction. Too much noise. Too many repeated stories that taught us to doubt our own origin. And when the soul forgets who it is, everything loses depth. Life becomes a stage with no script. Existence drags on like a blank page, waiting for something to fill it. But nothing does. Because what's missing isn't out there. It's inside. Thoth said the worst exile isn't being banned from a land. It's being cut off from your own essence. It's living an entire life believing you're just the name you were given, the body you live in, the number on your IDs and bills. The soul in that state becomes muffled noise, a whisper lost in the crowd of imposed inner voices. But that forgetting has a crack, and it's called remembering. To remember isn't to recall facts. It's not digging up memories like files. Remembering in this context is to reconnect, to tie the thread back together, to feel something stir in your chest that says, I came from somewhere else, and I came here for a reason. This remembering doesn't come to everyone at the same time. It doesn't show up in crowds. It doesn't follow logic. But when it comes, it's impossible to ignore. It's like waking up from a dream that felt way too real. You look around and everything looks the same, but inside, nothing is. You no longer believe what you used to believe. You no longer feel what you used to feel. You no longer recognize yourself in the roles that once felt so final. And that's when the real awakening begins. The moment you stop trying to escape the pain and start listening to what it has to say. The moment the emptiness stops being an enemy and becomes a portal, because it's inside the emptiness that spiritual memory is reborn. Modern life sold us the idea that emptiness has to be filled fast. But what Thoth reveals is the opposite. The emptiness is the womb. It's the fertile space where the soul can speak again. It's when silence settles in, when everything seems to have lost meaning. That true meaning starts to rise, and in that process of remembering, you realize the call was always there, disguised as restlessness, as anxiety, as longing. You were never lost. You were just asleep. Thoth never wrote to condemn us. The prophecy isn't a sentence. It's a mirror. It doesn't point fingers. It shows just how far we've drifted from what's always lived inside us, and it shows, just as clearly, the way back. Because remembering is the key. And when the soul starts to remember, the next move is inevitable. It wants to go back, not to a physical place, not to an idealized past, but to the source, to the center, to what it never stopped being. But that stayed quiet while the mind screamed. That return isn't a spiritual fantasy. It's a vibrational need. Because no matter how far a human being tries to go, they'll always end up missing what connects them. Thoth lays it out clearly. The human soul is a reflection of the all, a living mirror of cosmic intelligence. And when that mirror gets dirty, fogged, distorted, darkness shows up, not as punishment, but as consequence. The sickness of the world begins when that bond is broken and the disconnection spread quietly. First, we lost the rhythm of nature. Then, we stopped listening to our own bodies. Then, we started living outside ourselves, chasing goals, status, more goals, back-to-back distractions, until the sound of the soul became so faint it felt like it wasn't there anymore. But it's still there. The shaman in the forest understood this. When asked what was wrong with the world, he answered without hesitation. You cut off the connection to spirit. You cut the cord, and now you're trying to live without roots, without direction, without inner nourishment. But there's no healing without return, and that return doesn't depend on dogma or teachers or miracles. It only depends on real desire, because the path back is always open. It doesn't matter how far someone's gone. It doesn't matter how many layers of fear, lies, or pain have built up. The connection was never fully broken. It's asleep, and it can be awakened with one sincere gesture, the desire to hear again, to hear the sound of your own soul again. That doesn't take complex ceremonies. It takes presence, sincerity, silence. It takes looking inward and making peace with everything that was forgotten. It's a commitment, not to outside rules, but to your own essence, a silent pact with the truth. That's where planetary healing begins. Transmutation begins with you. And when the soul starts to sing again, something changes for good, not on the outside, but at the core of your being. Reality stays the same. The news is still the same. The world keeps spinning with its noise, its clashes, its collapses. But inside, a point of light turns on, and that point of light changes everything. Thoth had already revealed this in the deepest teachings of the Hermetic tradition. The universe is mental. Everything that exists was once conceived as thought, idea, image, vibration. The world we see with our eyes is just the reflection of a much subtler field where everything is born. And if everything begins in that invisible field, then that's where the real revolution starts. It's not about marches, or shouting, or external revolts. It's about a revolution that happens in silence, inside the mind, in the depths of emotion, behind the scenes of consciousness. True alchemy was never about turning metal into gold. It was always about transforming states of being, transmuting fear into wisdom, anger into compassionate strength, insecurity into presence, ignorance into light. And that transmutation doesn't begin with others. It starts with you. It's in the moment you choose not to react with anger that something shifts. When you take a deep breath instead of repeating an old pattern, you break an invisible cycle. When you catch a heavy thought forming and choose not to feed it, you shift the vibration not just of your own field, but of the entire subtle fabric around you. Every micro-choice matters because chaos feeds off what you feel, what you think, what you believe. And every time you give in to the frequency of fear, urgency, fragmentation, chaos gains power. But every time you choose not to identify with it, it loses ground. That's real alchemy. Silent, invisible, non-transferable. And that's why the power lies in the hands of the ones who awaken. Not to control the world, but to recreate it, particle by particle, from consciousness. A single act of love carries weight. A clear word ripples out. A sincere glance realigns. The subtle field responds. Reality responds. The future responds. The prophecy doesn't fulfill itself. It's a blank page, an open structure, and we're the ones who decide how it will be written. The collective destiny isn't set in stone. It's floating in the air, waiting for new authors, the new reality shapers, the ones who choose to remember, to clear, to align. The change you've been waiting for starts when you stop waiting and start being. And when you start being, when your vibration stops repeating old patterns and starts radiating true presence, something deeper is revealed. Because that individual awakening isn't the end of the journey, it's the beginning of a greater mission. Earth was once a sacred garden, not a metaphor, not poetry. Ancestral memory, memory that pulses in the bones, in the waters, in the stones. A time when humans lived in tune with heaven and earth, when the sound of the soul was heard by all creation, when spirit still danced freely through the cycles of nature. But we forgot. We broke the bond. We stopped listening. We left the soul behind in the name of speed, control, conquest, and where there was harmony, concrete grew. Where there was silence, noise moved in. Where consciousness blossomed, distraction took over. The garden turned to dust, but Thoth said not all would be lost, because among the dust there would rise those who remember, souls who, even surrounded by chaos, could still sense the fragrance of the invisible. Aware drops in a sleeping ocean, lights glowing in the night. These souls wouldn't be known by titles or appearances, but by what they carry, a frequency, a presence that heals without speaking, a gaze that awakens without asking, a vibration that rebuilds without touching. And that's how the garden begins to return. Not all at once, not with spectacle, but through small gestures, through silent choices, through vibrations that align with what is pure. Every time someone chooses to listen instead of react, forgiveness over guilt, compassion instead of judgment, a lost flower blooms again. A fallen star reappears in the inner sky. A fragment of paradise returns to Earth's vibrational field. This rebuilding isn't physical, it's vibrational. And it's happening now, in this very moment, in the exact point where you choose to remember why you came here. Because we're not here just to survive, we're here to restore, to remember the original sound, to give Earth what it's always waited for, the awakened consciousness of the human being. The prophecy wasn't written to create fear, it was written as a calling. But before you go, listen to this. A special video has been prepared for you, and it's not showing up by chance. It's the continuation of what your soul has already begun to remember here. So don't leave just yet. Click the video that's showing on the screen and let's meet there. Because what's waiting for you could change everything. I'll see you on the other side.